So for those of you who are curious about my work and what it's like to take part in one of my meditation sessions, which are somatic meditations, or as I call them, sensory movement meditations, I want to explain a little bit of my process here. And I'm going to use the beautiful events that unfolded in the run-up to and throughout the latest in-person meditation that I held on the 27th of December 2022 to just illustrate how these actually come about. And before I start with that, I call them sensory movement meditations or somatic meditations because they're not the kind of meditation you would normally expect, perhaps in the traditional Buddhist technique of sitting still, essentially working through your bodily needs to move, to scratch that itch and that sort of thing. It's actually much more about listening to the body and then acting on what your body is guiding you to. So it's a very different kind of meditation, and it's not about sitting still. And in my experience, this kind of meditation is a way to tap into how you are in the moment, what you need in the moment. And it really helps when you regularly practice to really understand yourself, what emotions occur, what drives you, and to start to create that space between, as some people say, between receiving some sort of stimulus, some sort of input, and then responding to it. So you're not reacting from a reflex, from some sort of ingrained pattern. You start to be able to have more control over how you might see a certain situation, or simply by recognizing how you are feeling, you start to then understand what it is that you need to do to manage, to resolve some more difficult emotions or events in your life. So anyway, that being said, I'm going to read what I wrote down. I wrote down a day after I actually started the night I held the meditation, but I ended up finishing it the following day. So I'm going to read this out to you now. It all starts with the intention to hold a loving space for others and for myself. What does a loving space look and feel like? I tune into that. Then it is about listening. Is there a special event, like the end of the year, that the session can grow around? A theme, perhaps. That can provide another intention and some elements to affirm or to start to create a structure, aside from the usual opening and landing, the resting, the moving, the reflecting, and the closing. Then it is all surrender. I know that if I script my meditations, I won't be able to respond in the moment to the space, to the people attending, to myself, to what messages need to be heard and woven in between the scripting and the event or the session. And those inspirations that come as my guiding words unfold during the session. Last night was a beautiful example of this. At 2 p.m. for a 5 p.m. 1-hour session, I started with my idea of handwriting out poems and writings that have been of significance to me, rolling them up and placing them in a basket. These were for participants to pick from the basket and to keep for themselves later on. In order to do this, I had one of my favorite books by my side, John O'Donohue's To Bless the Space Between Us. because at least one of his poems was going to make it into the basket. And I opened it to a section about the heart. I'll read a short passage that I actually read out at some point during the meditation. The heart has a beautiful simultaneity, and I struggle with this word. The heart has a beautiful simultaneity, being at once the place of arrival and departure within the body. All the wearied blood arrives there to be refreshed and renewed. And it is from this place that the newly invigorated life force sets forth. And it goes on, and I read more, but it ends with the heart. Well, where your treasure is, there is your heart also. A quote, apparently from the New Testament in the Bible. And the heart is the divine sanctuary. So that's the passage, or part of the passage, that I opened this book to. And I paid attention to that. That is what it is to listen. And I knew intuitively that I wanted to start the meditation with sensing through the skin. And gradually moving deeper into the body, through the layers of the skin and the layers of the body. And now I knew that I would, on my journey, arrive at the heart. The path to it would have to be left to the moment, to my unfolding words, to my responding in the moment. Faith and trust that I would be able to weave the journey in a beautiful, meaningful way for my participants, and that the right questions to invite them to ponder would arise. From there, I gathered the art materials I was going to bring to the session as aids in expression and reflection. I opened up one of the paper pads, still from my childhood, stored here in New Hampshire all these years. So there was sometimes some children's drawings from when I was little in there. So I opened up one of the paper pads to be sure that only blank pages were contained within. Lo and behold, a forgotten painting was found from April 2020, so more recent. It was titled, Water Cycle Equals Life Cycle. The process described, which was a reflection I wrote out after painting about the process of making art, not only mirrors the way I hold space for others and create the experiences and meditations for them, but it is really about life. So I wrote, to create from nothing, to follow your intuition, or as I would add now, to follow the lead of your body, to feel free to experiment, to accept the mistakes, to be patient, to refine, to gain perspective, to be surprised at the result, to find your flow, to start again. So that's what came from my water cycle painting experience. Not to mention how beautifully it tied in with the reading from John O'Donohue's book that I had already bookmarked. He talks about the heart as a circle. Talk about circles, endings, and new beginnings. Now there was so much richness of content suddenly in my hands. The only thing I could do was to bring it all with me and to see what felt most poignant to share, when, in each moment, once I was present with my participants in the space. So at 4:15 p.m., this is quite the process. It needs time. So I started at 2, roughly. At 4:15 p.m., I started the car for it to warm up a bit because it's really cold out. Loaded it up, and at 4:30 p.m., I headed to the yoga studio where the session would take place. 2 people attended, and it was a rich, beautiful, warm experience and sharing. So that was my process. And then just a few words of gratitude. I am ever so grateful to those who attend these sessions. Gift themselves the space for stepping out of the day-to-day and daring to rest and discover learnings and treasures that can only bring greater joy into their lives. It is a joy to me as well. Truly it is. And a privilege to follow this calling, to hold these healing spaces for others. I pray that many more will show up in these ways and benefit from what I have to offer, what the space that I hold has to offer. Will you be the next one to show up? So this was my scribbling. And I hope that was interesting to you. And I hope that whether you show up online for a session or an in-person session, that maybe, you see what goes into creating these meditations, that you really benefit from the process that I very consciously follow around them, whether it's just my 12-minute mini breaks in my Joyful Breaks membership, or a longer half-hour session, or even a longer 1-hour session. So there's always an openness to listening, and including listening to you as a participant. That is very important. If you want to check out my programs and you haven't attended any yet, I'll make sure to share the links below. Take care. Thank you for listening and watching.